And now I think that to start hearing a little bit from the Iranian perspective, I will call on Dr. Amirahmadi, Hooshang Amirahmadi, the founder and the president and everything of the AIC. And while he's doing all these things, he also manages to write books, including one that is coming out in the spring. Hooshang, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Shane, and thank you for taking your precious time to organize this event with us. It's a pleasure and honor to be here speaking to this very distinguished group. As I was hearing Ambassador Dobbins and Dr. Pillar, I just remember the AIC white paper that we put together back in 2009. That paper is it's on the AIC website, and believe it or not, 99% of what is being said these days, it's in there. The reason I raise this issue is because I am concerned. I'm concerned that this time too, just like the last time, the administration is not going to listen. I think they should be listened to Rand Corporation, to Ambassador Dobbins, to Ambassador Pillar, to Ambassador Hunter, to Ambassador Tom Pickering, and so many great ambassadors this country has ever produced. And they are all saying the same thing. Stop threatening and start talking. I want to today focus on two possible deal breakers. One has to do with Iran's domestic scene, and second with what I call the possible U.S. miscalculation of what is in Iran's mind these days. Both, I will argue, could be indeed deal breakers. But before that, let me just say also that in 25 plus years that I have been actively in U.S.-Iran relations, I have, just like many of you, have noticed that any time Iran has been ready for a compromise, U.S. has taken it wrongly and withdrawn, and anytime U.S. has been ready for a compromise, and the Iranians have taken that wrongly and moved away. My hope is that this time, that problem of non-correspondence between the wills do not happen. As I speak here, I will say that, as was said, I think Tehran is quite ready. I could say that very openly, quietly, that for the first time ever, perhaps, Iran is more than ever ready. And not only that, Ayatollah Khamenei, who has never, ever put himself directly in any negotiation with 5+1 or the US, is right in it. I will explain to you in a second that he is right in it, and it's impossible for him to go home failed, because otherwise, I would say, tremendous consequences will follow from that defeat. But first, I just have a statement that I wanted to read from, and that would be probably more time-saving. I think on the Iran side, as I said, there is a serious struggle domestically between two groups. Bottom line comes to Ahmadinejad versus Khamenei, but they are really not directly in the scene. They are in the scene through their representative over how to negotiate with the U.S. as they go to Baghdad or in Istanbul when they were. Iran newspaper, the official newspaper of the government, wrote an article a few days ago accusing openly by name Foreign Minister Salehi and Mr. Alaaddin Burujerdi, who is the chair of the Parliament's Committee for Security, National Security and Foreign Policy, basically telling them, you have created a situation where Iran's negotiating power has been reduced, tremendously weakened, because these guys, along with a few others that have been implicitly accused, including Haddad Adil, who is very close to the leader, and Jalili himself, who is the negotiator, that they have been going around begging the United States, that is to say 5+1, to remove sanctions. In fact, Jalili has been quoted saying, asking Ashton, quoting 100 times during the meeting, that please remove sanctions. Now, the opposition in Tehran to this particular view argues that that will give the US a wrong impression. It will misread us wrongly, because the government has been arguing over the last several years that sanctions will have no impact, that you will not be able to bring us to our knees by just adding to more and more sanctions. And now you guys, that is the officials, are going around and saying, well, sanctions are having an impact, please remove it. Okay, otherwise we may come to our knees at some point. So that argument is understood and understandable. I believe Khamenei is in charge of this process. I don't think that the group that is opposing Khamenei is going to have to succeed. But the problem is already there. Bastab, a site that is very close to Hashemi Rafsanjani, and he is this, president of the Expediency Council, and Mohsen Rezai, who is the secretary to that particular organization, which is also, in a way, indirectly in charge these days of this negotiation. Bastab wrote a piece in return and in response to Iran, basically directly accusing Ahmadinejad by name, saying that you guys have done this in the past. Now that our country is prepared to reduce tension and come to an understanding, you are going around and destroying that opportunity. You better stop doing it. And in fact, he gives, the site gives examples. And one example it gives that I had never heard, and that's very interesting, is a new revelation. It says, when Larijani was the negotiator and also the secretary of the National Security Council, obviously made a deal with Mr. Solana, with Mr. Solana in Brussels. And that particular deal had 11 quote-unquote articles. And that particular deal had been okayed by the leader. But immediately after the deal, Ahmadinejad made a speech at the Friday prayer and said, this deal has been done behind my back. It will not go, and he dismissed Larijani. And Khamenei, obviously, because he was not open in the field with this particular deal, said, all right, if you don't want Mr. President, let it go. Now, according to Bastab, if that deal had gone through, we will not be here now in terms of sanctions and everything else. And therefore, basically saying, Mr. Ahmadinejad, you are responsible for all the sanctions, okay, that are imposed on us, and now you blame us for asking to remove them. This is where the debate in Tehran is. Again, there are other people that are taking from this debate and writing many articles, but the bottom line is that this problem exists. Now, I believe this time, as opposed to the Brussels agreement, Khamenei is more in charge than he has ever been. Ahmadinejad has been weakened tremendously, and I don't believe he could derail this particular movement that has been started between Iran and 5+1. Again, Ahmadinejad could make all kinds of other moves that could create problems, like he went to Abu Musa, an island, that is under dispute, and of course it's an Iranian island, according to Iran, but it created a lot of problem out there. I don't believe, however, that would be the case now. Ahmadinejad will not be in a position to disrupt that. What my concern, therefore, is that deal breaker from domestic politics is weak, is under control, and Khamenei could deliver. What concerns me is the deal breaker in the US side. Now, here is what I think the deal breaker in the US side is. Again, there are so many other evidences that I can see. I don't believe, at least I have to be convinced, that the move from the US, the discussions that are around and very hopeful, very positive, optimistic, this particular change of mind in this country is strategic. I believe it is tactical. Now, if it is tactical as opposed to being strategic, we are in serious trouble, and I will tell you why we are in serious trouble. Now, why it is tactical as opposed to strategic? Because when I read from so many things that is coming, particularly the piece that Los Angeles Times, for example, reported, and it got like so much hype around. The fact is that the New York Times, the LA Times piece doesn't say that the United States of America has accepted Iran to enrich at 5%, at its soil. What it says is that we think that the course of diplomacy has not yet worked, that we need to move in stages, and at some point in the future to make Iran stop enriching. So therefore, what the US is trying to do is to basically start a negotiation with Iran, to take some from Iran, give some to Iran, but at some future point to come back and say, sorry, you still are enriching, and as per the UN resolutions, you have to stop it. Now, if this was to be the case, again, I suspect that is the case. I hope not. It is not the case. If that is the case, we are in trouble. And why we are in trouble? We are in trouble because Khamenei, as I said, is in the middle of this. Khamenei has said over and over that the nuclear enrichment on Iran's soil is part of Iran's national dignity. It is Iran's sovereignty, its pride, its prestige, and everything else that he could find to connect to this particular enrichment issue. Now, he has been saying it over and over. Now, I don't believe this man can really drink that poison cup that Khomeini had. Why? Because after all, Khomeini took that cup with him, and that cup doesn't exist anymore in Tehran. And second, this is not the same man, and Iran is not in the same situation. I believe if Khamenei was to agree to any idea about suspending enrichment on Iran's soil now or in the future, he is finished. He is finished, and the Islamic Republic is finished. That's how the people in the right are saying. The conservatives are saying daily. If I had time to go into the detail of this quote that I have, you would have seen what it is. And the speech is available. Please read it. Actually, it's now being published at the Asia Times. It's right on the Asia Times website now. Now, so therefore, if Khamenei was to not succeed in gaining certain concessions from the US, for example, on the sanction side, he would be going back home from Baghdad seen, quote unquote, defeated. But he cannot afford to be defeated for two reasons. First, in the country, people like Ahmadinejad and others are going to have to make a mess. And Khamenei can't just afford to be reduced to Ahmadinejad's level. Second, his theory that US is after regime change will be much more stronger than it has ever been. And therefore, to save himself, Khamenei will have absolutely no option but to become even more radical. And I believe the way he will become radical is after any defeat, if God forbid it happens, he will give a notice to IAEA. They need to give the notice 3 months in advance that we are withdrawing unless A and B are met. And if A and B, which is sanctions or whatever that is, are not met, then we will withdraw, and they will withdraw if those sanctions those conditions are not met. Now, you may say Khamenei understands the consequence of it. I say yes, but it doesn't matter whether you die in the war front or in your bed. Okay, if you don't take that action, you are dead. Khamenei cannot afford to be defeated this time. He is right in it. In fact, Jalili is speaking not for Iran. He is speaking for the person of Ayatollah Khamenei. In the letter he has that he showed to 5+1, the letter says openly that this man represents not just Iran, but the person of Khamenei. So this is very important, the development that what I'm trying to do is to say is that this is a very different situation. And my hope is that the United States will not miscalculate this time, that it will be realistic about what it can get from Iran at this stage, and that it will not be tactical, but strategic about this move, and that we will end up into something that is happier than what I was predicting. My hope is that I'm wrong. Thank you very much, Anousa.